Before we venture into a story that shakes the very foundations of justice and trust, imagine a world where even the strongest walls can crumble at the hands of the one we least expect. Today, we will open the file of a horrifying Crimea verdict of conscience tainted by cunning and cruelty. This is a story that demands your patience and focus, a story that will make you question the true nature of evil hidden beneath the most flawless facade. If you are someone who loves detective tales, gripping mysteries, and tense battles of wits between good and evil, make sure you've hit the subscribe button and turned on notifications, so you won't miss a single part of this haunting journey. Your support is the driving force that allows us to bring even more unique and captivating stories like this to life. Now, turn off the lights, relax, and prepare yourself to step into the world of Arthur Blackwood, the death lawyer. The polished mahogany desk gleamed under the soft, recessed lighting of Arthur Blackwood's corner office, reflecting the impeccable order that defined his life. From the meticulously aligned leather-bound law books to the single, perfectly centered silver pen, every detail bespoke control, precision, and an unyielding commitment to excellence. Arthur himself was the epitome of this aesthetic. Tailored suits that draped over a lean, athletic frame, silver-streaked hair artfully combed back from a high forehead, and eyes a piercing, intelligent blue that held a depth few dared to plumb. He was, by all accounts, a titan of corporate law in New York City, a partner at Sterling and Finch, one of the most prestigious firms on Wall Street. His reputation was unblemished, his success legendary, his charm effortless. Yet, beneath this flawless veneer, a darker, far more intricate mechanism was at work. Arthur Blackwood did not merely interpret the law. He manipulated it, bent it, and, in his most private hours, saw himself as an arbiter beyond its earthly confines. He perceived the world as a grand, often messy chessboard, populated by pawns, knights, and bishops, and a few troublesome kings and queens who, in his estimation, required removal. His targets were never random. They were individuals he deemed flawed, corrupt, or simply superfluous to the grand design he envisioned for his meticulously ordered existence. They were the architects of small-scale injustices, the purveyors of societal decay, the arrogant, the obtuse, the morally bankrupt. And he, Arthur Blackwood, had taken it upon himself to be their quiet, unseen judge, jury, and executioner. His first victim, Alfred Thornton, was a man whose financial empire was built on dubious shell companies and the exploitation of vulnerable immigrants. Thornton, a client of a rival firm, had recently gloated about a legal maneuver that had cost Sterling and Finch a major deal, and Arthur, while outwardly gracious, had registered the slight as a profound personal insult. Thornton was not just an opponent. He was a symptom of the very rot Arthur despised. The method, like all of Arthur's subsequent endeavors, was a masterpiece of clandestine execution. Arthur had cultivated a casual acquaintance with Thornton at several high society functions, slowly building a rapport. He learned about Thornton's severe, though carefully managed, heart condition, his reliance on a particular brand of imported herbal tea, and his fondness for a specific rare, non-toxic orchid that adorned his study. The poison, a complex synthetic alkaloid, was custom synthesized by Arthur in a clandestine, well-equipped laboratory hidden beneath an old, inherited upstate New York cabin. It mimicked the effects of a massive myocardial infarction, leaving no detectable trace in standard postmortem examinations. One crisp autumn evening, Arthur attended a charity gala where Thornton was also present. A brief, seemingly innocuous conversation at the bar, a shared laugh, and then Arthur subtly maneuvered a small, tasteless, odorless capsule into Thornton's glass of scotch when the man briefly turned to greet another acquaintance. The capsule dissolved instantly, its contents absorbed into the amber liquid. 2 days later, Alfred Thornton was found dead in his opulent penthouse study, slumped over his desk, a half-finished cup of his favorite herbal tea beside him, the rare orchid blooming serenely in the corner. The official cause of death was a massive heart attack. The city mourned the passing of a prominent, if controversial, businessman. Arthur Blackwood sent a condolence basket of exotic fruit to Thornton's widow, accompanied by a handwritten note expressing his deepest sympathies. His hand was steady, his conscience clear. He believed, corrected an imbalance. Detective Isabella Izzy Rossi of the NYPD's Homicide Division was a woman who lived by her gut, a visceral understanding of the city's underbelly that transcended procedure manuals and forensic reports. She had seen too much, smelled too much, and felt too much not to trust that inner compass. When the initial report on Alfred Thornton's death came across her desk, natural causes, a massive heart attack, Izzy felt a familiar prickle of unease. It wasn't the nature of the death itself. Wealthy men had heart attacks. It was the perfection of it. Thornton, despite his reputation, was known to be a hypochondriac, a man who obsessively monitored his health. He had access to the best doctors, the latest treatments. A sudden, catastrophic heart attack, while medically plausible, felt too neat, too final for a man who clung to life with such ferocity. When Izzy visited the crime scene, which wasn't technically a crime scene, just a death, she found herself staring at the orchid. It was an unusual detail, striking in its beauty against the grim solemnity of the room. She noticed the half-finished tea, the slight grimace on Thornton's face that seemed less like pain and more like a final, confused frustration. "Something both Arinya, Izzy?" Detective Mark Jensen, her partner, asked, leaning against the doorframe, munching on a bagel. Jensen was a decade older, a steady hand, and a man who believed in the tangible. He respected Izzy's instincts, even if he often struggled to follow them down the rabbit hole. "Just the picture, Mark," Izzy murmured, gesturing vaguely around the pristine study. "It's too perfect, too arranged, like a tableau. And the tea, and the orchid." Jensen raised an eyebrow. "Guy liked tea, Izzy. Guy liked pretty flowers. What's the big deal?" "No big deal, I guess," she conceded, though her intuition screamed otherwise. She just couldn't articulate why. There was no forced entry, no struggle, no missing valuables. Just a dead man and a profound sense of wrongness. The medical examiner, Dr. Lena Hansen, a seasoned professional with little tolerance for gut feelings, had been unequivocal. Cardiac arrest, detective. Clean as a whistle. Textbooks. Izzy filed the report, but she didn't close the mental folder. Alfred Thornton became a lingering question mark in the back of her mind, a faint echo in the city's cacophony. Weeks turned into months. Arthur Blackwood continued his double life with effortless grace. By day, he won impossible cases, closed multi-million-dollar deals, and charmed clients and colleagues alike. By night, he meticulously cultivated his garden of death. His second victim was Eleanor Vance, a formidable, silver-haired socialite known for her sharp tongue and even sharper investments. Eleanor had a penchant for publicly humiliating those she considered beneath her, and Arthur had been subjected to her casual cruelty at a charity event where she disparaged his choice of wine, then his firm's handling of a minor inheritance case for a distant relative of hers. She saw him as a hired hand, not an equal. Eleanor was a connoisseur of fine chocolates, a fact Arthur discovered during his discreet observations. He tailored another slow-acting poison, one that would mimic the symptoms of a sudden, severe allergic reaction. Eleanor was known to have several mild food allergies leading to anaphylactic shock. He then arranged for a box of exquisite, artisanal chocolates from a new, exclusive patisserie to be delivered to her Fifth Avenue apartment, a gift ostensibly from a grateful, anonymous charity recipient. Eleanor, delighted by the unexpected luxury, consumed several pieces with her afternoon tea. Within hours, she was found convulsing on her antique rug, her face swollen, her breathing labored. By the time paramedics arrived, it was too late. The official cause of death was a severe anaphylactic shock, likely triggered by an unknown allergen in the chocolates. The patisserie was investigated, its ingredients scrutinized, but no common allergen was found. The case was chalked up to a tragic freak accident. Arthur, reading the newspaper reports over his morning espresso, felt a surge of cold satisfaction. Eleanor Vance, in her entitled arrogance, had underestimated the silent forces that governed the world. He was merely an instrument of poetic justice. When the report on Eleanor Vance landed on Izzy Rossi's desk, another jolt of that familiar unease shot through her. Two prominent figures, two seemingly natural yet eerily sudden deaths. She remembered Alfred Thornton's pristine study, the perfect orchid. Now Eleanor Vance's apartment, with its untouched half-eaten box of chocolates and the chillingly serene expression on her post-mortem face, despite the violent nature of the alleged anaphylaxis. "You're not going to tell me this is too perfect again, are you, Izzy?" Jensen asked, seeing the furrow in her brow. "Maybe," she admitted, tapping her pen against the file. "Thornton had a heart attack. Vance had an allergic reaction. Both unexpected. Both in their own homes. Both high profile. Coincidence? Izzy. New York is a big city. Rich folks drop dead all the time. Stress, bad habits, genetics. It's not a conspiracy." "But what if it isn't?" Izzy pressed. "What if there's a thread? Just something we're missing?" She pulled out Thornton's file from her cold cases with a gut-feeling drawer. She meticulously cross-referenced their social circles, their business dealings, their charity affiliations. It was a tedious, mind-numbing task, sifting through hundreds of names. She found no direct links, no shared employees, no common enemies obvious enough to warrant murder. Yet, a name kept reappearing, like a phantom limb ache. Arthur Blackwood. He was present at the same gala as Thornton, handled legal work for a charity Vance heavily supported, and even attended the same exclusive private club. But Blackwood was a lawyer, a pillar of the community. He was a connection, not a suspect. "Blackwood Arthur?" Izzy murmured, staring at his name in the files. "The hotshot lawyer from Sterling and Finch. You ever dealt with him, Mark?" Jensen shrugged. "Briefly, on a white-collar fraud case. Solid guy. Sharp as a tack. Ironclad alibis for everything. Why? Just. He was around both of them. Peripherally. Nothing direct. Just a name that pops up." Jensen chuckled. "Izzy, the man probably rubs shoulders with half the social register. If being in the same room as a dead rich person made you a suspect, we'd have to arrest every gala attendee in Manhattan." Izzy knew Jensen was right logically, but her gut continued to hum a discordant tune. She decided to delve deeper into Arthur Blackwood's public life, not as a suspect, but as a potential source of information. Perhaps he knew something, however innocuous, that might connect Thornton and Vance. She started attending high-profile events where Blackwood was likely to be present, observing him from a distance, watching how he moved, how he interacted. He was, she noted, impeccably charming, almost too perfect. He exuded an aura of calm competence, a man utterly at ease in his own skin. It was unsettling. Arthur Blackwood, aware of the subtle shift in the atmosphere, noticed the attractive, intense detective at two separate functions. He knew the NYPD's reputation. They were tenacious, even if often misled. He had not, however, expected Izzy Rossi to latch onto such tenuous threads. He had seen her name on the initial reports for both Thornton and Vance, a small detail his meticulous nature had logged. He admired her persistence, even as he found it an annoying complication. His third victim was a man named Samuel Harding, a junior partner at Sterling and Finch. Harding was a brilliant, ambitious young lawyer, but also fiercely competitive and subtly manipulative. He had recently discovered a minor, yet potentially embarrassing, ethical lapse Arthur had committed years ago, a calculated risk that had paid off handsomely but could have ruined his career if exposed. Harding, instead of going public, had subtly used this information to gain leverage, hinting at it during a heated negotiation, attempting to usurp Arthur's lead on a major client acquisition. Arthur did not tolerate blackmail, especially from an inferior. Harding, in Arthur's twisted calculus, represented a direct threat to his carefully constructed universe. He was an unstable element, a rogue variable that needed to be eliminated. This time, Arthur chose a different approach, one that preyed on Harding's vices. Harding was a heavy drinker, a closeted alcoholic who meticulously hid his habit from the firm. Arthur exploited this. He introduced Harding to a new, exclusive brand of expensive, obscure whiskey, a gift for Harding's exceptional work. Over a period of weeks, Arthur subtly spiked Harding's personal supply of this whiskey with a cumulative neurotoxin that mimicked the effects of severe, rapidly progressing alcoholic liver failure, culminating in a sudden, catastrophic brain hemorrhage. The initial stages were insidious. Increasing fatigue, unexplained tremors, a growing loss of motor control, all easily dismissed by Harding and his concerned colleagues as the result of stress and overwork, perhaps combined with his unacknowledged drinking problem. Arthur, with feigned concern, even suggested Harding take a leave of absence, citing his deteriorating health. Then, one rainy Tuesday morning, Samuel Harding collapsed in the firm's main lobby, convulsing violently. He was rushed to the hospital but died on the operating table. The cause of death, after a quick, stress-induced postmortem, was attributed to acute liver failure exacerbated by alcohol poisoning and a sudden, massive intracranial hemorrhage. The firm mourned the loss, citing the tragic consequences of unchecked stress and, implicitly, a hidden addiction. Arthur Blackwood was the first to offer his condolences to Harding's young widow. His voice appropriately somber, his eyes filled with a controlled sorrow. He even volunteered to help manage the legal aspects of her husband's estate, a gesture of profound kindness that further cemented his reputation. This time, when the file on Samuel Harding landed on Izzy's desk, it was no longer a vague intuition. It was a thunderclap. Harding, a partner at Sterling and Finch, Arthur Blackwood's firm. "This is it, Mark," Izzy declared, slamming the file down. 3 high-profile deaths, all seemingly natural. All connected, however tenuously, to Arthur Blackwood. Jensen, having witnessed Izzy's growing obsession, took a more serious tone. "Okay, Izzy, let's list it out. Thornton, Vance, Harding. What's the real connection? Not just Blackwood was in the same zip code. Harding was Blackwood's colleague. Thornton and Vance were in Blackwood's professional and social orbit. It's a pattern of proximity. And the deaths themselves. They're too perfect, too clean. Heart attack, allergic reaction, liver failure/brain hemorrhage. All things that happen naturally, but all happening to people who, by all accounts, should have been fine or at least had managed their conditions." Dr. Hansen, the medical examiner, had also started to express some low-level concern about Harding's case. The speed of his decline, the unusual combination of symptoms, had made her pause. She was willing to do a more in-depth toxicological screen on Harding, something she'd been hesitant to do on Thornton or Vance due to the apparent natural causes. What if we're looking for a killer who doesn't leave fingerprints, Mark? No obvious weapon, no struggle. Someone who weaponizes the body's own vulnerabilities. Jensen ran a hand through his thinning hair. "You're talking about poison, Izzy. But modern toxicology is good. If it was poison, they would have found it. Unless it's a poison that mimics natural processes so perfectly, it's virtually undetectable with standard screens. Or something that degrades too quickly. Or something new." Izzy's mind raced, connecting disparate facts. Think about it. Each death plays on a weakness. Thornton's heart, Vance's allergies, Harding's hidden alcoholism. It's almost personal. She pulled up Arthur Blackwood's public profile, staring at his smiling, confident face. A man of impeccable reputation, a pillar of the community, a legal genius, and potentially a cold-blooded killer. The thought was horrifying, audacious, and utterly compelling. "Arthur Blackwood," Izzy said, her voice barely a whisper. A name no longer just a loose thread, but a potential anchor to the escalating horror. "He's not just a connection, Mark. I think he's the common denominator. And if I'm right, he's just getting started." The city, oblivious to the creeping shadow within its highest echelons, continued its frantic pace. But in Izzy Rossi's mind, a quiet storm was brewing, the first ominous rumbles of a case that would soon shake America to its core. She had a name, a chilling hypothesis, and an undeniable gut feeling. What she lacked, crucially, was a single shred of tangible evidence. And Arthur Blackwood, the architect of shadows, knew exactly how to keep it that way. The city's relentless pulse seemed to quicken its beat, mirroring the frantic churn in Detective Izzy Rossi's mind. The deaths of Alfred Thornton, Eleanor Vance, and now Samuel Harding had coalesced into an unholy trinity, a dark constellation with Arthur Blackwood at its terrifying center. Her initial gut feeling had sharpened into an unshakable conviction, a cold, hard certainty that resonated deep in her bones. Yet, conviction alone was a ghost in the courtroom, intangible and easily dismissed. She needed evidence, a tangible thread to pull, something that could withstand the scrutiny of a skeptical precinct captain, a disbelieving DA, and the inevitable legal juggernaut that Arthur Blackwood would unleash. The morning after Harding's death, the air in the Homicide Division office was thick with a tension that had little to do with the usual caseload. Izzy sat hunched over her desk, surrounded by the 3 case files, their contents splayed out like morbid playing cards. Jensen watched her from his own desk, his bagel forgotten. He had seen Izzy like this before, in the grip of an obsession, but never this intense. The usual jaded cynicism that coated most veteran detectives seemed to be cracking under the relentless pressure of Izzy's conviction. "Okay, Izzy," Jensen said, finally breaking the silence. "Let's assume for a minute you're right. This isn't random. This isn't coincidence. This is a serial killer. A ghost. How does he do it?" Izzy looked up, her blue eyes blazing with an unholy mix of frustration and fierce determination. "He weaponizes vulnerabilities, Mark. Thornton's heart, Vance's allergies, Harding's drinking. He finds the Achilles heel, then he exploits it with something that mimics natural death. Something untraceable or designed to degrade. Untraceable is a big ask, Izzy, especially now. Forensic science, toxicology. It's come a long way. But what if he's ahead of it? What if he's using compounds so novel, so specific, that they're not in the standard databases? Or what if he's administering them in ways that make detection almost impossible?" Izzy paused, gathering her thoughts. "Look at the patterns. All in their own environments. No forced entry. No obvious struggle. No witnesses. He's either someone who had access, or someone who could create access without leaving a trace." She pulled out a printout of Arthur Blackwood's public profile again. "He's a legal genius, Mark. Imagine that mind applied to murder. Every move calculated, every contingency planned for. He doesn't just know the law. He knows how to break it without getting caught. He knows what questions to ask, what evidence to look for, and more importantly, what to not leave behind." Jensen grimaced. "So we're up against a hyper-intelligent, invisible killer who's also a high-powered attorney. Great. Just great. Where do we even start?" "We start with Dr. Hansen," Izzy declared. "Harding's case. The speed of his decline, the unusual combination of symptoms." She had doubts. "I need her to go deeper. A full, comprehensive toxicological workup. Every possible compound, every rare substance. No stone unturned. And I need her to review the autopsy reports for Thornton and Vance again, with a fresh pair of eyes, looking for anything at all that might have been missed." Dr. Lena Hansen was a woman of science, data, and procedure. She was methodical, precise, and had little patience for speculative theories unless backed by tangible evidence. However, Izzy had a way of cutting through the bureaucratic red tape with sheer force of will. When Izzy presented her theory, calmly laying out the circumstantial connections and the insidious patterns of death, Dr. Hansen listened, a flicker of professional curiosity sparking in her usually impassive eyes. "Detective Rossi," Dr. Hansen began, her voice crisp, "you're asking me to perform an exhaustive toxicological analysis on a death already ruled natural, and to review 2 other cold cases, purely on a hunch that a prominent lawyer is a serial killer. Do you have a warrant for these exhumations?" "Not yet, Doctor," Izzy admitted, "but I'm working on it. What I need from you first is a deeper dive into Harding. His death was rapid. The combination of liver failure and hemorrhage, while plausible, was also unusually swift. Is there anything, any obscure compound, that could mimic those effects and be difficult to detect?" Dr. Hansen leaned back, a thoughtful expression on her face. "There are always new designer drugs, new chemical compounds emerging. Some are incredibly potent, some mimic natural diseases, and some can degrade rapidly in the body, or their metabolites are hard to distinguish from natural biochemicals. But without a specific compound in mind, It's like searching for a needle in a haystack the size of a continent. I need you to search that continent, Dr. Hansen. Every corner. Assume someone wanted to kill Harding without being detected. What would they use? What would they look for? Reluctantly, but with a growing sense of scientific intrigue, Dr. Hansen agreed to a more extensive, specialized toxicological screen for Samuel Harding, using advanced spectrometry and chromatography techniques that went beyond routine panels. She also agreed to review the previous 2 reports, cross-referencing for any subtle anomalies. It was a small victory for Izzy, but a critical first step. Meanwhile, Arthur Blackwood, perched in his opulent office high above the city, was acutely aware of the subtle shift in the winds. He had seen the aggressive, focused gaze of Detective Rossi at social functions. He had also received word, through his network of discreet contacts within the NYPD and City Hall, a network he had cultivated over years of legal work and well-placed favors, that Harding's death was being looked at with particular interest, and that Detective Rossi was spearheading the inquiry. He admired her tenacity, even as he found her persistence a dangerous inconvenience. She was not easily swayed by appearances, a quality he respected in an adversary. This meant he needed to be even more meticulous, even more careful. He had covered his tracks flawlessly thus far. His poisons were bespoke, synthesized in a discreet, soundproofed lab in the basement of his inherited, secluded cabin upstate, a perfect, untraceable sanctuary. He had designed them not only to kill but to mislead, to mimic natural processes. The delivery methods were always personalized, exploiting known habits or weaknesses. He was a master craftsman, and his work was, to him, art. But Izzy Rossi was chipping away at the foundation of his masterpiece. He needed to be proactive, to not only stay ahead but to control the narrative. He also needed to continue his work. His personal sense of justice, his self-appointed role as society's silent arbiter, demanded it. There were still too many unworthy individuals cluttering his meticulously ordered world. His next target was Robert Maxwell, a powerful real estate developer known for his ruthless tactics, including the illegal eviction of elderly tenants and the destruction of historical landmarks for profit. Maxwell was a client, ironically, of Sterling and Finch, though Arthur had never directly handled his cases. However, Arthur had witnessed firsthand Maxwell's callous disregard for human suffering and the law's inability to truly punish him. Maxwell was building a new luxury tower, displacing an entire community of artists and small businesses, a move Arthur viewed as an act of pure, unadulterated greed and cultural vandalism. Arthur began his usual meticulous surveillance. Maxwell was a fitness fanatic, obsessed with his health and diet, but he also had a secret. A severe, undiagnosed nut allergy that he had managed to keep hidden, even from his closest associates, due to an embarrassing childhood incident. He carried an EpiPen but rarely spoke of it, believing it a sign of weakness. Arthur discovered this through a painstaking review of old medical records from a hospital where Maxwell had been treated for a minor injury years ago, records Arthur accessed via a highly sophisticated, untraceable digital hack orchestrated through a series of anonymous proxy servers. The method for Maxwell was elegant in its simplicity and chilling in its precision. Maxwell frequented an exclusive, members-only health club where he meticulously prepared his post-workout protein shake from a selection of organic ingredients he brought himself. Arthur, through a carefully orchestrated bribery of a disgruntled club employee, gained access to Maxwell's locker. There, he discreetly replaced Maxwell's usual protein powder with an identical-looking, custom-blended powder that contained a highly concentrated, finely milled peanut-based protein potent enough to trigger a massive, fatal anaphylactic shock in seconds, and masked by the strong flavors of other ingredients and the general intensity of a workout. 2 weeks later, Robert Maxwell collapsed in the health club's sauna, gasping for breath, his face rapidly swelling, his EpiPen still in his locker, untouched. By the time help arrived, he was gone. The medical examiner, after a swift preliminary examination, confirmed severe anaphylaxis. The club was cleared, the protein powder was tested, but the specific allergen was attributed to a new, unexpected food sensitivity or cross-contamination at the protein manufacturer, a tragically rare occurrence. The police report marked it as an accidental death. But this time, the media wasn't so quick to dismiss it. For high-profile individuals dead from natural causes in a span of months, the whispers started. Conspiracy theories proliferated online. The New York Sentinel ran a speculative piece titled, "A String of Tragic Coincidences or a Shadowy Hand at Play." The pressure on the NYPD mounted. The file for Robert Maxwell landed on Izzy Rossi's desk like a hot coal. She barely needed to read the preliminary report. She knew. The pattern was screaming now, a cacophony that even Jensen couldn't ignore. "Nut allergy, Izzy," Jensen said, his voice quiet, almost defeated. The guy was a health nut. How does a health nut suddenly drop dead from a nut allergy he supposedly didn't know he had? He knew he had it, Mark, Izzy stated, her fingers flying across her keyboard, cross-referencing. "I found a faint old record of an emergency room visit when he was 12. Peanut exposure. Listed as a severe allergy. Then it was buried, probably out of embarrassment. He managed it. Blackwood found it." Jensen stared at her, his jaw slack. How? How could Blackwood possibly know that? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? He's a lawyer. He has access. He can probably hack anything. Or maybe he has people. Either way, this confirms it. He's tailoring the kill. The chief of homicide, Captain Davis, a gruff, no-nonsense man, finally called Izzy and Jensen into his office. The media frenzy around the Maxwell death had forced his hand. "Rossi," Davis began, "you've been pushing this serial killer theory for weeks. Harding, Vance, Thornton, now Maxwell. For prominent citizens, all dead from natural causes. The papers are having a field day. Do you have anything at all, besides gut feelings and tenuous connections, that ties Arthur Blackwood to these deaths?" Izzy laid out her hypothesis with a calm, articulate precision that belied the storm raging inside her. She spoke of the pattern of vulnerabilities exploited, the meticulous planning, Blackwood's proximity to each victim, the highly unusual nature of each natural death, and the extraordinary difficulty of tracing such sophisticated poisons. She presented the preliminary, expanded toxicology results from Dr. Hansen on Samuel Harding, which, while not identifying a specific common compound, had revealed several highly unusual and complex metabolic byproducts not typically found in human toxicology screens, consistent with the introduction of an unknown, sophisticated synthetic compound. The byproducts suggest a neurotoxin, Captain, Izzy explained, one designed to induce symptoms mimicking advanced liver failure and a brain hemorrhage. Dr. Hansen is struggling to isolate and identify the primary compound because of its rapid degradation and the complexity of the metabolites. But she's certain it's not a natural occurrence. Captain Davis leaned back, a deep frown etched on his face. "So, we have a genius lawyer, a ghost, using designer poisons, and your best evidence is unusual byproducts that we can't even name? And his motive? What, he just doesn't like rich people?" "His motive, Captain, appears to be a twisted sense of justice. He targets people he deems corrupt, harmful, or simply unworthy in his own personal moral code. He sees himself as a superior arbiter. And his proximity to these victims isn't just social. It's almost like he's selecting them from his own professional ecosystem. He interacts with them, observes them, finds their weakness, then eliminates them. It's a terrifying hypothesis, Rossi," Davis admitted slowly. "But without a weapon, without direct evidence, it's a house of cards. Blackwood is untouchable. He has more lawyers on retainer than we have detectives in this entire division. His reputation alone could get this entire investigation shut down." "Then we have to get the evidence, Captain," Izzy insisted. "I need warrants. Warrants for exhumations for Thornton and Vance. Warrants for Blackwood's financial records, his travel, his communications. I need to know where he was and what he was doing at the exact times of these deaths." Davis sighed, running a hand over his bald head. "You'll get your warrants, Rossi, but tread carefully. One false move, one leak, and this whole thing blows up in our faces. Blackwood will sue us into oblivion, and your career and mine will be over. You go after this man, you better have him dead to rights. And you do it quietly. No media. No fanfare. You hear me? Izzy nodded, a grim satisfaction settling in her stomach. It was a start. A dangerous, high-stakes start. The exhumations of Alfred Thornton and Eleanor Vance were conducted under strict secrecy, cloaked in the pre-dawn hours to avoid media scrutiny. Dr. Hansen, working tirelessly with her team, applied the same advanced toxicological screens she had used on Harding. The results were slow, painstaking, and ultimately chillingly consistent. In Thornton's tissues, they found faint but undeniable traces of highly sophisticated synthetic alkaloids, specifically designed to mimic cardiac arrest, a substance so new it lacked a name in conventional databases but whose structural analogs suggested a potent cardiotoxin. In Vance's remains, the screens revealed complex protein compounds that, when isolated and tested, caused immediate and severe anaphylactic reactions in test subjects, a compound so specific that it would have been missed by any standard allergy panel. He's a ghost in the machine. Izzy? Dr. Hansen stated, her voice full of a professional awe mixed with horror. He's not using rat poison. He's synthesizing bespoke death. Each compound is different, tailored to the victim, designed to leave the barest whisper of a trace, or to degrade into harmless, unrecognizable metabolites. He is, quite frankly, a chemical genius. The new forensic evidence, coupled with the pattern of deaths and Blackwood's proximity, finally gave Izzy the leverage she needed. Captain Davis, pale and grim-faced, authorized a full-scale, covert investigation into Arthur Blackwood. Meanwhile, Arthur, through his carefully placed informants, learned of the exhumations. A cold wave of something akin to admiration, mixed with a sharper edge of concern, washed over him. Detective Rossi was proving to be far more intelligent, far more relentless than he had anticipated. She was getting too close. The unusual byproducts were a problem. The bespoke nature of his poisons, his pride, was now a potential vulnerability. He needed to create a distraction, a diversion that would send the police chasing ghosts, buying him time to consolidate his position, perhaps even to eliminate his most persistent pursuer. He decided to widen his scope, to make his next act not just a personal judgment but a statement, a ripple that would spread fear and confusion. He would choose a victim who was not directly in his social or professional orbit, someone seemingly random, yet still unworthy in his eyes, but whose death would be so public, so shocking, that it would consume the city's attention. His next target was Mayor Richard Thompson. Mayor Thompson, while outwardly a champion of the people, was, in Arthur's view, a corrupt demagogue, quietly taking bribes from developers and consistently failing to address the city's most pressing issues, all while maintaining a pristine public image. Thompson was a symbol of the superficiality and hypocrisy that Arthur despised. The mayor was a creature of habit, particularly fond of his morning coffee, which he always bought from the same street vendor near City Hall, preferring the authentic taste over his office's automated machine. He took it black, no sugar, no cream. A small, almost imperceptible ritual, observed by hundreds of commuters daily, yet a profound vulnerability in Arthur's hands. Arthur spent weeks perfecting a new, potent toxin, a fast-acting neurotoxin derived from a rare South American plant, synthesized and concentrated to an extreme degree, caused rapid, overwhelming neural collapse, mimicking a sudden, massive stroke. It was odorless, tasteless, and, crucially, had a very short half-life in a hot liquid, degrading into harmless sugars and amino acids within minutes of ingestion. One bustling Tuesday morning, Arthur, disguised in a generic baseball cap, sunglasses, and a nondescript work jacket, blended seamlessly into the morning rush. He approached the coffee cart just as Mayor Thompson was placing his order. With a practiced sleight of hand, honed by years of silent practice in his lab, Arthur managed to drop a single, tiny, dissolvable tablet into the mayor's cup as the vendor turned to retrieve the coffee. The tablet dissolved instantly, its contents absorbed into the dark liquid. Mayor Thompson, oblivious, took a sip, smiled, and headed towards City Hall. He made it halfway up the steps before he stumbled, clutching his head, his eyes rolling back. He collapsed on the marble steps, convulsing violently, before falling still. Paramedics were on the scene within minutes, but it was too late. Mayor Thompson was pronounced dead on arrival at the nearest hospital. The official cause of death: a sudden, massive cerebrovascular accident. A stroke. The city erupted. The death of the mayor, in such a public and shocking manner, sent ripples of fear and outrage through every borough. Speculation ran wild. Was it a political assassination? A random act of violence? The media descended like vultures, demanding answers, demanding action. Captain Davis's office was a madhouse. Phones rang off the hook. Reporters hammered at the precinct doors. The governor himself called, demanding daily updates. Izzy and Jensen stood before Davis, who looked like he'd aged a decade in a single day. "Rossi," Davis roared. "This is your serial killer, isn't it? He just killed the mayor, the freaking mayor, and we have nothing. No weapon, no witnesses, no suspect. He's taunting us." "It fits the pattern, Captain," Izzy said, her voice strained but steady. "Sudden, natural death. Public. Shocking. A distraction. He's telling us he can touch anyone, anywhere, anytime." The pressure on Izzy was immense. She felt the weight of the city, the media, and her superiors pressing down on her. But she also felt a grim satisfaction. Blackwood had made a mistake. By going public, by killing the mayor, he had escalated the game. He had drawn a line in the sand, and he had revealed a crack in his armor. The need to control the narrative, the arrogance that came with his perceived invincibility. "We need to find him, Izzy," Jensen said, his voice unusually grave. "Before he kills someone else, before he completely destabilizes the city." Izzy's team, now expanded to include several of the precinct's sharpest minds, started to comb through every detail of Mayor Thompson's death. They interviewed the coffee vendor, reviewed hundreds of hours of surveillance footage from surrounding buildings. It was a needle in a haystack, but this time the entire city was the haystack, and the stakes were higher than ever. In her relentless review of the surveillance footage, Izzy spotted it. A fleeting, almost imperceptible detail. A man in a baseball cap, sunglasses, and a work jacket. His face partially obscured, but his posture, his gait, something about the way he moved, was strikingly familiar. He was near the coffee cart just as the mayor received his drink. The time of interaction was less than 2 seconds. Too fast for anyone to notice. She enhanced the image, painstakingly cross-referencing it with other surveillance footage from the vicinity, tracing the man's path for several blocks, hoping for a clearer shot. Eventually, 2 blocks away, as he removed his cap and sunglasses, walking into a less crowded street, a CCTV camera caught a fleeting, yet undeniable glimpse of his profile. The distinguished silver hair, the sharp, intelligent eyes, the aquiline nose. It was Arthur Blackwood. Izzy felt a surge of cold fury, mixed with a chilling triumph. She had him. Not a full face, not a direct confession, but enough. Enough to get a warrant. Enough to bring him in. "Mark," Izzy whispered, her voice tight with suppressed emotion, pointing at the screen. "We have him. It's Blackwood. He's the man in the cap. He's our ghost." Jensen stared at the screen, his face a mixture of shock and dawning horror. The impeccable lawyer, the titan of Wall Street, caught on grainy surveillance footage, subtly slipping poison into the mayor's coffee. The mask had slipped. The web was tightening. The hunt was officially on. The city watched, terrified, as the NYPD quietly, meticulously, prepared to bring down one of its most respected, yet most dangerous, sons. Arthur Blackwood, the architect of shadows, was about to step into the harsh light of justice. The arrest of Arthur Blackwood was a meticulously planned operation, executed under the cloak of night, a testament to the NYPD's determination to maintain secrecy and prevent a media circus before they had an ironclad case. Detective Izzy Rossi led the raid herself, a small, elite team of officers descending on Blackwood's opulent Fifth Avenue penthouse. They found him in his study, sitting at his mahogany desk, just as impeccably dressed as always, reading a leather-bound volume of classical literature. He showed no surprise, no fear, only a faint, almost imperceptible smirk as Izzy read him his rights. "Detective Rossi," Blackwood said, his voice calm, cultured, almost amused. "I've been expecting you. Though I must confess, I'm rather curious what baseless accusations have led you to disrupt my evening." "You're under arrest, Mr. Blackwood, for the murders of Alfred Thornton, Eleanor Vance, Samuel Harding, Robert Maxwell, and Mayor Richard Thompson," Izzy stated, her voice devoid of emotion, her eyes locked on his. Blackwood merely inclined his head, a gesture of polite acknowledgement. "A rather ambitious list, Detective. And I presume you have irrefutable evidence for each of these tragic, yet natural occurrences." "We have enough, Mr. Blackwood. Enough to take you in. And we'll find more." The search of Blackwood's penthouse yielded nothing incriminating. No poisons, no hidden lab, nothing out of place. It was precisely what Izzy expected. Blackwood was too smart, too careful, to keep his instruments of death in his primary residence. But the real prize, the hidden lab, was still out there. Izzy had a hunch, a strong one, about the upstate cabin, a property Blackwood owned that was secluded and off the grid. She dispatched a team to secure it, praying they weren't too late. At the precinct, Blackwood remained impassive, cooperative, and infuriatingly silent during his interrogation. His lawyer, a sharp, unyielding woman named Evelyn Hayes, a formidable litigator from his own firm, was at his side within the hour, preventing any meaningful line of questioning. "My client respectfully asserts his Fifth Amendment rights, Detective," Hayes stated, her voice icy. "He denies all these preposterous charges, and I advise you to release him immediately or face a lawsuit that will make your entire department regret this charade." Izzy knew this was a stalemate for now. Blackwood was a master of legal maneuver, and they couldn't hold him indefinitely without more. But the clock was ticking. The search team at the upstate cabin was her last, best hope. Hours later, as the first rays of dawn painted the New York skyline, the call came. The team at the cabin, after a meticulous search, had found it. A hidden, subterranean laboratory, accessed through a cleverly concealed passage beneath a vintage wine cellar. Inside, it was a chemist's paradise or a murderer's arsenal, depending on one's perspective. State-of-the-art synthesis equipment, custom glassware, meticulously labeled vials of complex organic compounds, detailed notebooks filled with chemical formulas and notations, and a digital database of obscure plant extracts and synthetic toxins. It was the smoking gun, the definitive proof. The forensic teams descended on the lab, carefully cataloging every item, every residue. Dr. Hansen, personally overseeing the collection, quickly identified several of the compounds and their precursors, matching them to the unique metabolites found in the exhumed victims. The lab was Arthur Blackwood's dark heart, the epicenter of his reign of terror. The news broke like a dam, flooding the city with a mixture of horror, disbelief, and a profound sense of betrayal. "Wall Street Titan, a serial killer," screamed the headlines. "The lawyer of death." The meticulously crafted image of Arthur Blackwood shattered, replaced by the monstrous reality of his crimes. The public reeled, unable to reconcile the charming, brilliant attorney with the cold-blooded murderer who had systematically eliminated those he deemed unworthy. Blackwood was formally charged, and the pretrial hearings began. The prosecution, led by a seasoned district attorney, presented a mountain of circumstantial evidence. Blackwood's proximity to each victim, the unique and tailored nature of the poisons found in their exhumed bodies, the detailed notes and synthesis equipment discovered in his hidden lab, and the crucial surveillance footage showing him at the scene of the mayor's murder. Evelyn Hayes, Blackwood's attorney, launched a fierce defense. She attacked the chain of custody for the lab evidence, questioned the reliability of advanced toxicological screens for such obscure compounds, and argued that the surveillance footage was inconclusive and could be anyone. She portrayed Blackwood as a victim of a targeted witch hunt, an innocent man caught in a web of police overreach and public hysteria. But Izzy Rossi was a relentless witness. She testified with a quiet authority, detailing the meticulous investigative work, the pattern recognition, the months of agonizing suspicion, and the chilling confirmation provided by Dr. Hansen's forensic findings. Her testimony painted a vivid picture of a calculated, methodical killer, one who viewed himself as above the law, playing God with human lives. During one particularly tense cross-examination, Hayes pressed Izzy, "Detective, you claim my client killed these people because he deemed them unworthy. Is this not a fanciful, almost literary motive you've invented to fit your narrative?" Izzy met Hayes's gaze unflinching. Mr. Blackwood saw himself as an arbiter, Ms. Hayes. He believed he was correcting the world's imperfections, one life at a time. The evidence shows a clear pattern of targeting individuals who, in his twisted view, were corrupt, arrogant, or simply stood in his way. The trial was a spectacle, a media circus that riveted the nation. Legal experts debated the novelty of the evidence, the ethics of exhumations, and the unprecedented nature of a killer who left no traditional forensic footprint. Public opinion was divided. Some saw Blackwood as a calculating monster, others as a brilliant man railroaded by an overzealous police force. Throughout it all, Arthur Blackwood maintained his composure. He sat in court, impeccably dressed, his posture erect, his expression a mixture of mild curiosity and disdain. He occasionally exchanged whispers with his lawyer, or simply observed the proceedings with an almost detached interest, as if he were an observer rather than the accused. He never showed remorse, never fear, never anger. His eyes, those piercing blue eyes, held an unnerving stillness, a profound absence of human emotion. Towards the end of the trial, in a desperate attempt to break his composure, the prosecution played a recording from a hidden camera found in Blackwood's lab. It was not a confession, but a recording of Blackwood, alone, speaking to himself. His voice, calm and measured, was heard detailing the synthesis of a new compound, explaining its intended effects, and then, chillingly, justifying his actions. "The world is a garden, full of weeds." Blackwood's voice resonated through the courtroom, amplified and clear. "And I am merely the gardener, tending to it, ensuring that only the strongest, the most beautiful are allowed to flourish. Some might call it murder. I call it order. Justice, in its purest, most uncorrupted form." A collective gasp swept through the courtroom. Hayes immediately moved for a mistrial, arguing the recording was illegally obtained and highly prejudicial. But the judge, citing the overwhelming evidence and Blackwood's history of calculated silence, allowed it to stand as a testament to his state of mind. The jury, after weeks of testimony and days of deliberation, returned a verdict. Guilty on all counts. The courtroom erupted. Izzy felt a wave of exhaustion, relief, and profound sadness wash over her. Justice, in its traditional, messy form, had been served. Arthur Blackwood remained impassive, his expression unreadable. As he was led away in handcuffs, his eyes briefly met Izzy's. There was no hatred, no anger, no fear in them, only a flicker of something cold and utterly profound, a silent challenge that seemed to say, "You may have won this battle, detective, but you haven't truly understood me, and the weeds will always grow back." The sentencing was swift. Arthur Blackwood was given multiple life sentences without the possibility of parole. He was sent to a maximum security prison, a man forever stripped of his carefully constructed life, yet seemingly unburdened by his fate. The lawyer of death case, as it became known, sent shockwaves through America, forcing a reevaluation of the justice system, forensic capabilities, and the terrifying potential for evil to hide behind the most respectable facades. Izzy Rossi, hailed as a hero, found herself grappling with the lasting impact of the case. She had brought down a monster, but the encounter had left an indelible mark. She had stared into an abyss of cold, calculated malice, and had seen how easily it could blend into the everyday, how it could be wielded by a brilliant mind convinced of its own moral superiority. The city began to heal, slowly, from the trauma of realizing that the very structures meant to uphold justice could harbor such profound darkness. But the name Arthur Blackwood, and the chilling story of the obsidian scales, would forever serve as a stark reminder that true evil often wore the most polished masks, and that the shadows, even in the brightest of cities, could run deeper than anyone dared to imagine. Izzy Rossi knew that the fight against such darkness was eternal, a quiet, relentless vigil that she, and others like her, would have to maintain, long after the headlines faded and the world moved on. The ghost had been caught, but its chilling whisper would echo for years to come.